My name is Lena. For 7 years, I was the flawless reflection in my husband David's gilded world. The perfect wife, the elegant hostess, the silent partner. What he never understood was that silence isn't empty. It's fertile ground. And in that quiet space, I grew something far more potent than love. A plan. The night I finally walked out, a cold November rain was painting the Manhattan skyline in streaks of silver and shadow. I didn't slam doors. I didn't leave a dramatic note. I simply placed 2 objects on the Carrara marble entry table, my Tiffany wedding band and a crisp, legal-sized envelope. Then I stepped into the elevator, the doors whispering shut behind me, closing the chapter on Lena Sterling, the ornament. For 7 days, David was in Bermuda with Chloe. Not on business, not even bothering to lie convincingly anymore. I knew this because I'd personally handled the booking, the private villa, the champagne, the couple's massages, charging it all to the platinum account he'd given me for household expenses. The irony tasted like fine wine. On the 8th day, he returned. I watched it all unfold from my laptop, sipping Earl Grey in a borrowed apartment across town. The cameras I'd hidden 4 years earlier, in the abstract painting he hated, in the vintage clock he never noticed, and in the bookshelf filled with unread leather-bound classics, gave me a perfect high-definition window into my former life. He entered the penthouse, that familiar, entitled sigh preceding him. "Lena? God, what a week. The flight was a nightmare. Make me a martini, will you? Extra dry." Silence. He flicked on the lights, his handsome face already twisting in annoyance at the inconvenience. Then he stilled. The air changed. Even through the screen, I could see him sensing it. The absence wasn't just physical, it was atmospheric. The penthouse wasn't just empty, it was neutralized. Every trace of my aesthetic, my presence, my scent had been surgically removed. What remained was a cold, beautiful shell, a museum exhibit titled A Successful Man's Life. He found the ring first. A slow, smug smile spread across his face. He thought it was a surrender, a melodramatic gesture from an emotional woman who'd finally accepted her defeat. He picked it up, the diamond catching the light. Then he opened the envelope. The smile died. The color drained from his face, leaving a waxy, pale mask. The document wasn't the pleading letter. It was a New York Supreme Court divorce petition, stamped and filed, citing adultery, fraudulent concealment of assets, and seeking not alimony, but a forensic accounting of every shadowy corner of his empire. "Lena!" The roar echoed through the empty space. He pulled out his phone, jabbing at my contact. Across town, my burner phone buzzed once on the coffee table. I watched it vibrate against the wood, the screen flashing, David Sterling. I let it go to voicemail. That's when Maria, our housekeeper for 20 years, appeared in the doorway of the servants' wing, her hands knotted in her apron. She looked terrified. David turned on her, a predator cornering a weaker prey. "Where is she?" "Sir, Mrs. Sterling, she left last Tuesday." "Where did she go?" Maria flinched. She said you were staying with Miss Chloe for the week. She packed a bag for you. It's in the hall closet." The old woman's eyes dropped, her voice a trembling whisper. "I thought you knew, sir. She said it so matter of fact." The humiliation was exquisite. It wasn't the discovery of the affair that shattered him. It was the delivery. The knowledge that our quiet, invisible housekeeper had been privy to his shame, had known his mistress's name, had for days been operating under the assumption that his double life was simply domestic policy. His secret wasn't a secret, it was household gossip. Panic, true and primal, ignited in his eyes. He shoved past Maria and took the stairs 2 at a time, his Italian loafers slapping against the marble. I switched cameras to the study. He went straight to the hideous neoclassical painting of a hunting scene, a gift from a sycophantic board member. He yanked it from the wall, revealing the steel face of a wall safe. His fingers, usually so steady signing million-dollar contracts, fumbled with the dial. Left to my birthday, the ultimate insult. Right to the year he took Sterling Global public. Left again to the day he met Chloe. The safe hissed open. The stacks of euros, the emergency passports, the unset diamonds, all there. He breathed a shaky sigh of relief, his arrogance trying to reassert itself. She's just a woman. What does she know about what's important? Then he reached into the dark cavity at the back, the real safe within the safe. His hand met empty air. I watched, my breath held, as he frantically clawed at the space. Nothing. His face went slack. 2 items were gone. The first, a simple black moleskin notebook, his little black book he'd called it once when drunk, thinking it clever. It contained codes, account numbers for offshore holdings in the Caymans and Cyprus, and handwritten notes detailing every bribe, every kickback, every whispered agreement that had built his fortune on rotten timber. The second item was worse. The heavy, ornate corporate seal for Apex Holdings Ltd., a shell company, a ghost, the legal entity I, Lena Sterling, had been the sole director of for 3 years, signing whatever documents he put in front of me without question. It was the engine of his money laundering, and its stamp was now in my possession, along with the ledger that explained its purpose. His phone rang, the sound shockingly loud in the silent study. He answered on the first ring, his voice a strained attempt at control. "Sterling?" "David, it's Jonathan." His lawyer. The voice was tense, stripped of its usual obsequious warmth. "She's filed an injunction. A judge just signed it, based on compelling evidence of asset dissipation and fraud." "What are you talking about?" "All your accounts, personal, corporate, the main Sterling Global Operating Fund, they're frozen, David, effective immediately. You can't touch a dime." The phone slipped from his hand, clattering on the hardwood. He sank into his Eames chair, the leather groaning. He fumbled for his iPhone, opening the banking app with trembling thumbs. The loading circle spun. Then the dashboard appeared. Balance: $87,450,211.18. And stamped across it in bold, undeniable red type, "Account frozen by court order pending judicial review." A sound escaped him. Not a word, but a choked animal gasp. The $87 million wasn't just money, it was oxygen, it was influence, it was the proof of his own existence, and it was now suspended in digital amber, visible but utterly untouchable. He was a billionaire beggar in a $40 million penthouse. The following 24 hours were a masterclass in his unraveling. I watched, my emotions carefully banked, as he moved from fury to desperation to a dawning, terrified comprehension. He called my mother in Vermont. "Eleanor, it's David. Is Lena there?" "David? No, dear. Is everything all right? I tried calling her yesterday. It went straight to voicemail. I figured you two were off on another adventure." Her genuine confusion was more damning than any conspiracy. I hadn't run to my mother. I hadn't run to anyone he knew. He hung up and scrolled through his own phone, a new horror dawning. He had thousands of contacts, politicians, celebrities, rivals, sycophants, but not one entry for Lena's friend. Not one. He'd systematically alienated me from my college friends, gently mocked my charity work. He'd wanted me reliant, isolated, and wholly his. He'd succeeded too well. Now, my complete social obliteration was my greatest shield. I was a ghost. He descended on Maria again, cornering her in the pantry. "Think, did she see anyone? Get any packages? You're hiding something, and I will have you deported." Tears streamed down the old woman's face. "A package, yes, sir, a few weeks ago. A thick one in brown paper. She took it to the study and locked the door. She was in there for hours." Maria swallowed, her voice dropping. "That night, I brought tea. The door was cracked. I heard her on the phone. She said, 'I have everything. The proof is complete. The clock starts now.'" The clock starts now. The phrase hung in the digital air between us. He knew then, this wasn't a crime of passion. It was a long, cold prosecution. Driven by a new fear, he logged into his most secret account, one held in a Swiss bank under a false name. The login worked, the balance was substantial, but as he scrolled through the transaction history, a pattern emerged. A beautiful, deadly pattern of my own design. For 24 months, there had been tiny, regular outflows. $4,200 to Veritas Art Consultancy, $6,800 to Athena Strategic Research, $3,150 to Pensieve Archives. Dozens of them, legitimate-looking invoices from legitimate-looking shell companies I'd created. They were small enough to avoid automatic fraud flags, irregular enough to not form a pattern unless you were looking for one. He did the math, his jaw tightening. I had bled nearly $2 million from his secret fund. His own illicit fortune had financed my war. The sheer, elegant audacity of it finally broke through his panic. He wasn't dealing with a scorned wife. He was facing a strategist. The doorbell rang. It was Chloe. She swept in, a cloud of Santal 33 and manufactured drama. "David, everyone is saying you're liquidating, that you're moving to Zurich. He can't leave me." She was performing, her eyes searching his for the reassurance he always gave. When he just stared, hollow-eyed, she played her card. She took his hand, placed it on her flat stomach. "We're having a baby, David. It's a boy. You promised me a life. You promised him a life." I leaned forward, watching. This was an unscripted moment, a variable. David looked at her, at the perfectly glossed lips, the artfully worried brow, the expensive emptiness in her eyes. He looked at her, and then he looked around the penthouse, at the ghosts of my presence, at the evidence of my meticulous, quiet intelligence. A raw, humorless laugh bubbled out of him. "You're not pregnant." His voice was flat. "I saw the recurring charge for your birth control pills last week, on the card I gave you." The facade cracked, a flicker of real fear. "That's for my skin. David, how can you—" "Get out." The words were quiet, lethal. "What?" "Get out!" he roared, the sound tearing from his throat. He grabbed a crystal paperweight from his desk and hurled it against the wall, where it exploded in a shower of glittering shards. "You greedy, stupid little girl. Get out of my house. You were a distraction. She was the architecture." Chloe fled, her sobs echoing in the hallway. David stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving. He'd driven away his distraction, but in doing so, he was left alone in the cathedral of his failure, with only the ghost of the woman he'd underestimated for company. It was then that his eyes, wild and searching, landed on the bookshelf, on the spine of a hollowed-out edition of The Great Gatsby. A tiny, almost invisible red LED light winked at him. He froze. Then he moved like a man possessed, tearing through his home. He found the camera in the bookshelf, another in the base of the baccarat base, a third in the air vent above his bedside table. 4 years. I had recorded 4 years of his life. His confidential calls, his board meetings streamed on Zoom, his late-night conversations with Chloe, his muttered calculations of fraud. He sank to the floor, the reality a physical weight. He hadn't been living a life, he'd been starring in a documentary for an audience of one. His mother's summons came next, a voicemail, her voice like chilled steel. The estate, 1 hour. The Sterling family manor in Greenwich was a monument to cold ambition. His mother, Victoria Sterling, sat behind a partner's desk that had belonged to his grandfather. She didn't offer him a seat. "She called me," Victoria said, without preamble. She pressed play on a recorder. My voice filled the paneled room, calm, clear, and unbearably kind. "Victoria, by the time you hear this, I'll be gone. I've left a fresh supply of the herbal blend for your neuropathy in the usual cupboard. The winters are hard on your joints. Please take care of yourself." A pause. The kindness hardened, not into anger, but into sorrow. "I am truly sorry for the scandal this will cause. He is free now to build the life he truly wants. Goodbye." Victoria stopped the recording. The silence was heavier than any shouting. "That woman," she said slowly, "had more dignity, more intelligence, and more loyalty than you ever deserved, and you traded her for a trinket." She spat the word. You've made this family a laughingstock. The trust is closed to you. The board is voting you out next week. Clean up your mess. If your failure touches the family's core assets, I will bury you myself. You are on your own." It was his corporate and familial death sentence delivered without a trace of maternal warmth. Alone, truly alone for the first time in his life, David made his fatal mistake. Desperation breeds stupidity. He called a number from the dark past, a fixer named Rocco. "Find her," David whispered into the burner phone, parked on a desolate side street. "Get the ledger, the stamp, and if she resists, make the problem disappear permanently." He thought he was playing his last brutal card. He didn't know it was the card I'd been waiting for him to play. The next morning, he attempted one last futile power move, storming into my lawyer's office. Marcus Thorne was waiting for him, a shark in a Savile Row suit. "Where is she? You tell me where my wife is hiding, or I'll—" "Or you'll what, David?" Marcus interrupted, serene. "We anticipated you might escalate to threats. That's why Mrs. Sterling authorized a dead man's switch. The evidence, the ledger, the videos, the financial trails, is encrypted on a server. If I fail to check in, or if Mrs. Sterling fails to enter a code every 12 hours, it auto-releases to the SEC, the FBI, and 3 major news outlets. You cannot touch her. Checkmate." He sank to the floor, the reality a physical weight. He hadn't been living a life. He'd been starring in a documentary for an audience of 1. His final desperate hope was the Mercer merger. If he could sign the deal, the influx of capital could let him flee, fight another day. In the boardroom, with the billion-dollar contracts on the table, just as his pen hovered, his assistant rushed in, her face ashen. "Overnight couriers, for everyone." The room filled with the sound of tearing paper. In each envelope was a bound report, Sterling Global, a forensic analysis of systemic fraud. It contained scanned pages from the Black Ledger, financial models tracing the laundered money, and high-resolution photos of him and Chloe in Bermuda, juxtaposed with business trip expense reports. Then, as if on cue, every phone and tablet in the room buzzed, a financial news alert. The anchor's voice filled the stunned silence. Joined now by renowned forensic analyst Sphinx, whose anonymous reports have toppled 3 corrupt corporations. The screen split, and there I was, not as Lena. My hair was darker, cut sharply, my glasses were new, but it was me, Sphinx. "Today," I said, my voice calm and authoritative, "we'll deconstruct Company Sigma, a textbook case of how personal corruption metastasizes into corporate cancer." And I proceeded to do just that. Using his data, his schemes, his words from the recordings, I dissected his entire empire live on national television. I didn't name him. I didn't need to. The merger collapsed before the segment ended. By the closing bell, Sterling Global's stock was in freefall. He was fired by his own board via text message. The final scene was an accident of fate, a gift from a universe with a wicked sense of poetry. 8 months later, I was in the international terminal at JFK, en route to London to open the European office of my new firm, a forensic advisory service, ironically. I was someone else now, confident, unburdened. A commotion broke the hushed terminal buzz. A businessman was berating a janitor, his face purple with rage over a spilled cleaning cart. "You imbecile! These are $700 loafers. Look at this!" The janitor, in a faded blue uniform 2 sizes too big, was hunched over, frantically mopping at the man's feet with a rag. "So sorry, sir. So sorry. My mistake." That voice, ragged, defeated, but familiar down to my bones. He looked up as the suited man finally shoved him away. It was David. The gauntness of his face shocked me, the cheap haircut, the hollow, hunted look in his eyes that once held only arrogant certainty. Our gazes locked across 30 feet of polished floor. A lifetime passed in that second. I saw the recognition hit him, followed by a wave of shame so profound it bent his spine further. He wanted to vanish, to dissolve into the linoleum. I felt nothing, no triumph, no pity, just a vast, quiet emptiness where he used to be. He straightened up slightly, as if some last shred of pride forced his spine to align. He looked at me, not at the woman he'd betrayed, but at the architect of his ruin. And in his eyes I saw it all, the apology, the regret, the sear scale of his loss. I held his gaze. Then I gave a single, slight, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a greeting. It was an acknowledgement, a period at the end of a very long sentence. I turned and walked toward the security line, the sound of my heels clicking a steady, final rhythm. I didn't look back. I had a plane to catch, a future to build, and a silence of my own choosing to enjoy. My revenge wasn't in his poverty or his humiliation. It was in my freedom, and it was absolute.